Hello, everybody. So this is yet another rather hackneyed YouTube premise, I think. However, I thought I'd do a video entitled 10 books that really changed my life because, yeah, I saw this video come up in my recommendeds. 10 books that really changed my life. And it's like such a typical thing to find on YouTube. And it's like, oh, they really changed your life. Like they didn't like pretend to really change your life or anything like that. So I don't know. These are some books I've read over the years that really influenced me or impacted my life in a particularly profound way. I suppose since any books I've read, I guess, have changed my life at least to some extent. Right? I mean, I've never really polished off a whole book without taking something from it or taking loads from it. I mean, even what I'm reading now, this Peter Ackroyd History of England. Like, there's like a wealth of detail in every page, in every sentence almost. There's like so much information here. It's brilliant. I'm gaining an unbelievable depth and insight into English history that I just didn't have before. Even though I've been educated in English history since I was like 5 or 6. So like I've been studying history for like since I was English history. There's like, but still way more now than I ever knew before, just because of having read one book on English history. That's like the equivalent of like a year's education in history, I reckon, in a book, and it's fantastic. But so I don't know. I haven't arranged these in any particular order, but I mean, I'll bring them into shot. Actually, I think if I can. Oh, I can't get all of them. Anyway, right, there's no point. So what have we got here? First one is Spinoza's Ethics. I try to make a point of reading quite widely and of challenging myself with reading. I think it's important because I want to be a writer. I think it's important to be conversant with a lot of different styles of prose, and also to read poetry. And I write poetry as well. And obviously, if you want to write poetry, reading poetry is essential. If you want to write novels, reading novels is essential. If you want to write non-fiction, which I also do, reading non-fiction is essential. But I've grown up with really rather a deep interest in religion and spirituality, and eventually the philosophy of religion. So this book by Spinoza, this is, I think, probably one of the most important books or important works in the philosophy of religion that has ever existed or has ever been written. It's a great masterpiece. It's a profound movement towards a logical or a sophisticated and modern understanding of notions such as God and like what we really mean by an all-powerful creator, or what the implications of monotheistic religion are, all contained within this. This is one of the central texts that led to the Enlightenment in Europe. Or atheists. I chatted with atheists on atheist discussion groups all about pantheism, and now they scoff at it. Whereas, without Spinozan pantheism, we would not have atheism in the way we conceptualize it in modernity. So, if the religious debates, if those are of interest to you at all, I couldn't recommend reading Spinoza highly enough, and maybe making this a very good starting point, probably for exploration into the philosophy of religion in modernity. Because I've made one or two mistakes with sort of big philosophy book purchases on this sort of topic. I mean, I bought City of God by St. Augustine, which, I mean, well, it did teach me quite a bit about like thinking back then, and actually thinking now as well, and how Augustine himself has influenced the development of Western morality and things like this. So that, very, very good as well. But I mean, really rather a tome, rather a slog trying to get through that, and I only got 150 pages in. I might finish off one day, I don't know. But Spinoza, brilliant stuff, fantastic. Manufacturing Consent, I think, is the next one. I must have read this when I was 18 or 17. Um, yeah, the first Noam Chomsky book I read. In terms of changing my life, it really did change my life. I mean, reading this is like it's a very uncomfortable truth that you encounter in this. The the mass media being this sort of propaganda machine for Western political interests and all this sort of thing, and the discussion of proxy wars in Nicaragua and El Salvador, and this business of selling arms to both sides, and how the media is instrumental in establishing consent among the public for things like American foreign policy interventions in different parts of the world. And this is gonna, well, this clearly will enter history as, one of the landmark sort of texts of our generation, or sort of this side of the 20th century. I think this sort of post 1950 era. When was it written? Actually, is it actually quite recent? It's like the 90s when he wrote it. Was it the 70s or something like that? Well, no, it couldn't have been. But I mean, 80s. What was it actually written? Oh no. Oh god, it doesn't say. I should have. I'll just find the latest footnote. Hang on. The most recent footnote in it. 94, 1988. So you might have written this at the end of the 80s? That seems likely. If I remember it all that well. I want to say it's like written in 91. That's like when I want to say this has been written. But I might well be wrong on that. I don't know. Do I care all that much? No. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, in terms of understanding history of the 20th century, of this American epoch in history, the post-World War II, American globalized politics, another foundational thing, one which, certainly will resonate in history. I think this one, it will be, remembered for many, many centuries, probably. Let's face it, after Chomsky eventually dies, because he's a very old man, of course, looking ever more like Gandalf recently, And he's a sort of white wizard of, I guess, my generation's intellectual world, and someone very, well, I mean, if there's anyone worth reading, I guess Chomsky is one of those people, isn't he? So that would do you no harm to read it. This book, this is like a little bit, this might seem like a bit sort of cheesy or like bleeding heart a bit, but this was just an impulse purchase that I purchased in a train station on a way to, I think, a job interview on a farm or something. And it's called The Secret Life of Cows. It was an interview at Hartbury College for a course there. The Secret Life of Cows by Rosamund Young. It's just like, I had a huge smile on my face the entire time I was reading it, because I always wanted to get into farming, because I wanted to work with cows, and like seeing all the nice little cow characters, like Fat Hat 2 and Fat Hat 1, and how they all have the different personalities and habits and little idiosyncrasies. I love like this sort of farm, I think. I mean, I was always tending more towards dairy, but Rosamund Young actually has a beef farm, so maybe beef farming, but like this sort of beef farm, just where they let the cows get on with it. I think it could be really, really good. So it was a beautiful book, and it kind of cemented a personal ambition for me. So that's more of a personal thing that was important to me, having read that, and it did change my life. I read this year. This blew my mind. This blew me away. This is one of the greatest history books I've ever read, or the greatest history book I've ever read, very possibly one of them. There's actually, so to speak, another history book on this list. So, yeah, this fantastic. It's like the history of the modern world. It's the history of the West since antiquity. It's the history of the spread of Christianity, which led to Islam in the sixth century AD, I think. Or thereabouts, like fall of the Roman Empire, Constantine, and the breakup of the Eastern Church and the Western Church, and the history of schism and Catholicism, and like just hold it in your hands, just like, oh, such a big, meaty, like big boy history book. I love it. You feel like, yeah, it's like this sort of thing, having that on your bookcase, all lovely crinkly by yourself. Like, it's the sort of thing that separates the men from the boys, I think. Having like one of them on there. And yeah, like there's nothing in this that doesn't benefit anyone to know. And really seeing like, yeah, quite how fanatical often and superstitious and paranoid and petty people were in the past when it comes to religion, but also how profound a lot of it was, and how meaningful a lot of these huge developments were within the church and within the different churches. So yeah, it was profound having read this. Maybe I don't like fully understand, or like, yeah, it hasn't fully sunk in yet for me, but it's quite a ride. It was fantastic reading that. Loved it. This Dante's Divine Comedy, I haven't actually read this one. I gave away the first edition I had, the Oxford World's Classics edition of this that I had. This is a Penguin classic of it, and I've just skipped already in this one actually to the last canto and the last line of the last canto, and then my my desire and will were turned as on a great wheel, balanced evenly by the love that moves the sun and the other stars. I remember reading that as like the last canto of Paradiso, and just like the tingly set, and I was like, it was the most beautiful thing I'd read at that point, I think, or the most profound reading experience. I didn't realise poetry could be quite like this, but I regret having purchased this one because I don't like the translation as much as the Oxford World Classics edition. So I want one of those again. And I'm going to get rid of this. But I mean, yeah, it was so a joyous, beautiful reading experience. Unbelievably clean, simple language. Not difficult at all. Really fluid, really engaging, and really clean, simple, elegant, and beautiful, and profound. Wonderful, wonderful reading experience. Possibly one of my favourite poems still, or yeah, very possibly. I make the top 5 in terms of favourite poems. My favourite poem is Eidolons by Walt Whitman, but yeah, that'll be up there certainly. I think if I ever do a top 10 poetry list. This changed my life. I read this. I read Divine Comedy when I was 19. I read this when I was 18. Because I was on my way to. Well, I was thinking, I think, about what I wanted to study at university, since I was expecting. No, it was after then. Yeah, I was anticipating studying English or something at university, I think. I was on my gap year when I read this first. And I was also lining up like philosophy courses. And I think at some point I sort of then realised I was going to go to University College Utrecht in the Netherlands to study literature, history, philosophy, political theory and biology, which is quite a lot. And yeah, I ended up reading this. And it gave you like as Stephen Fry says, the grand tour of Western philosophy, and it was a stark and eye-opening experience. Again, not fantastically difficult to read. Russell's writing, I've read quite a lot of Bertrand Russell's books. After having read The Problems of Philosophy in this one, and really got into them, because again, very crisp, clear, engaging writing, and is he's very, very good on that level, and explains things very clearly. And this just gave me like a huge bomb of information, just an understanding and knowledge, the point of reading books. I haven't actually got to any novels yet. I'm about to. I'm going to go through a poetry book first. I would have actually selected Yellow Tulips, but I don't know. I can see it now. It doesn't matter. James Fenton. It could be any James Fenton poetry book, really. Out of Danger. I love this copy of Out of Danger that I've got, even though basically all the poems in this are also in Yellow Tulips, so there's no point buying it. But it's just a nice book. It's like a hardback. I think it's like from the 90s or something, or the 80s. It just looks beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. First edition Out of Danger by James Fenton, 1994. Yeah, amazing. Love it. Fenton's my favourite poet, I think, at the moment. I don't think I've read a bad James Fenton poem. I don't think I've read a James Fenton poem that I don't see like 3 times as much in it the second or third time of having read it. And he's a poet I can keep going back to and keep getting more out of his work. It's, beautiful, beautiful stuff. Amazing, really good, brilliant. I noticed this video is getting a little bit long, so I'm going to try and keep it brief with these last 3 books. I read this a few years ago. This is Austerlitz by W.G. Sebald. It's a heartbreaking, incredibly sad, beautiful. The writing, the prose is second to none, and it's each line of it resonates with a certain in a certain sort of emotional frequency or register or whatever you like, and it's absolutely gorgeous, wonderful, astounding to read, and heartbreaking. And I first encountered Sebald when I read The Rings of Saturn, when I was probably about 21 or so, and his writing, his prose, well, the standards of it, it knocked me for 6 back then. And I knew about this for some time. I didn't buy it, then I eventually bought it and read it, and I was like, wow, it's a masterpiece, obviously. It's just fantastic. It's, astounding novel, work of fiction. It was advertised as fiction anyway. Not to give too much away about it. I write fiction also, so I think it's very important to read widely in fiction. I suppose there's a lot of fiction titles I could have selected really for this, but I was thinking more about in terms of ones that have changed my life, if you know what I mean, because that's obviously the title of this video. So I'm not really going to select fiction, because a lot of fiction I do read it. I mean, I really well, that's just a story. It's like watching a movie. Did Bridget Jones's Diary change my life? Actually, it did, I suppose. Did Batman Begins change my life? Is a movie I think about from time to time. Lots of books are like that. Lots of very good books are like that. And Silence of the Lambs, it's a great book actually, and also film, but it only changed my life to a very minimal extent, I think. This, on the other hand, Gravity's Rainbow, this did change my life. This really, I think, showed me where sort of the bar is set in like American or like English writing, I think post 1950, and it's incredibly funny. It's hugely funny in like very college humory way. And, like, there's so many pratfalls, there's so much silliness in it. The prose is out of this world. The writing is unbelievably beautiful. The imagery is so engaging and beautiful and haunting, and it's just the most astounding masterpiece. It really is. Like as a technical achievement in writing prose, it's just fun. It's phenomenal. Imagery of the rockets, allusions to physics and chemistry and tarot, even, and ancient mysticism and all this stuff. And it's my favourite novel. I love Gravity's Rainbow. It's got exactly my humour in it, and it's one of the greatest masterpieces of English literature. It is, it's my obsession book. If you know, not obsession, but I mean, it's one I want to keep coming back to again and again. This is the second copy of it that I've owned. I read it the first time many years ago, I think, when I was 22. Yeah, I was travelling through Europe, and I gave it away after having read it. I read it in about a month, because it will take you about a month to read it if you're really kind of going at full clip. If you're really pushing yourself, you can read it in a month, I think. It's hard going. It really is hard going, but it's worth it, I think. This made me a better writer as well, reading this. It made me a better reader as well. A better reader and a better writer. And I imagine if I had 10 lifetimes, I could continue reading fragments and extracts of this and continue getting more stuff out of it and continue getting more layers of meaning and more depth from it. And makes a good doorstop also. And I love it to bits. I think it's just the most amazing thing. The most amazing book ever. But loads of people hate it. This final one's this come across as a little bit snarky and pretentious. But it's another philosophy title, Wittgenstein's Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. And I must have read this when I was 19 or so. And I think, this is another one where you can open any page and get sort of huge insights into things. The world and life are one. I am my world, the microcosm. There is no such thing as the subject that thinks or entertains ideas. If I wrote a book called The World as I Found It, I should have to include a report on my body and should have to say which parts were subordinate to my will and which were not, etc. This being a method of isolating the subject, or rather of showing that in an important sense there is no subject, for it alone could not be mentioned in that book. The subject does not belong to the world, rather it is a limit of the world. Where in the world is a metaphysical subject to be found? You'll say that this is exactly like the case of the eye in the visual field, but really you do not see the eye, and nothing in the visual field allows you to infer that it is seen by an eye. And so on. It's very short. It's actually really approachable, quite easy. But and obviously it ends on the famous tautology, the world is everything that is the case. And the title is quite intimidating, and there is logic notation in it, i.e. there's maths in it, but I don't think, you necessarily... It's also possible to decode that if you know what the symbols mean, and figure out what inferences Wittgenstein is trying to draw. Since sort of logically, it's not too difficult, it's not way too onerous. But I don't think you actually need to really know it either, necessarily, to get loads and loads out of reading this. And it's beautiful. It's very, very profound. The underlying thrust of it, I believe, is that most problems in philosophy emerge out of misunderstanding the terms used in philosophical discussions or debates or arguments. So a lot of the time in philosophy, we're just playing language games. So, and I read this that really changed the game of philosophy for me and understanding that. And I was semi-thinking about seriously trying to become a philosopher at one point, but I don't think I want to do that now. I think I've abandoned that ambition. Just become some sort of maybe public intellectual type if I can, /writer, /comedian, /farmer. So I'm happy with my life, I think. But yeah, I'm very glad I read this. Yeah, anyone would get a lot out of reading this. It took me 2 hours to read it as well. No joke. It is only 89 pages long. Yeah, what we cannot speak about, we must pass over in silence. Yeah, it's 89 pages long. It took me 2 hours to read. 2 hours of your life to read this, and to, just be able to say you've read Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus by Wittgenstein, or something. If, showing off is what you want, you can't just do it for that reason. But it will put something in your mind that has the potential to, change your life. Or it's like you're standing on an atom bomb of knowledge, or of insight, or understanding. And it will rock your world. Yes, it will. It's very, very potent stuff, this. Amazing. So yes, these are the 10 books I've read between the ages of, I suppose, 18 or so, or 17, and 29. That have changed my life. Loads. You must read. Bye everyone, thank you for watching, love you lots.